welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and the project we're going to look at in this video series is going to be a birthday present. My granddaughter is turning 14 in just a few days, and I started this project back in January. It was cold in January. I worked on it some during February, and it was cold in February, and now it's the latter part of March. I believe today is the 22nd of March, and it's cold in here as well. I've got a couple of heaters going here in the tin barn, and it's going to warm up a little bit. But this video series is actually going to be a reverse build. I've done these type of videos before. What I'll do is show you the finished product, and then we'll look at each individual part and the build process required to produce it. So let me turn the camera around and we'll get started. I thought long and hard about what kind of case I could come up with to put Naomi's birthday present in. And it finally dawned on me that a flatware box, silverware box, would probably be ideal with a little repurposing. So I was able to locate this box, remove all the trays inside for the flatware, and put or set it up so that it would hold her product, her birthday present. What I have made for her is a menorah. Some of you may or you may not be interested in a menorah itself, but I do encourage you to watch the video series because there's a lot of different machining functions and steps that went through to come up with this product. The parts we're going to look at are the base, the pedestal, the body itself, the pendologs, and the candle holders. Our first part is going to deal with just the base itself. I made the base and the remainder of it so that it could be taken apart for storage in the box. So let's take a look at how the base was developed. The base for the menorah is going to be a piece of 4-inch square 304 stainless steel. And in this stainless steel, I'm going to engrave a Star of David, 3.5-inch Star of David in that. Star of David is basically a hexagon, but instead of the 6 sides being, instead of the 6 points being connected on the outside diameters, it's connected by 3 sets of parallel lines. So what I've done is I've got the rotary table on the mill with the pallet on it as well, and found the center. I found the center of everything. Now all I did was use a little program that I've got on my computer to get this zoomed in a little bit for you. These parallel lines, the first one will be 0.875 to the right of the center and negative 1.516 on the y-axis. Then we'll go to negative 0.875 and same on the y. Go from each direction. 2 and 6, 3 and 5. I'm sorry, 2 and 5, 3 and 6 will go together. I think it'll make more sense to you when I actually start this, but what I'm going to do is use the rotary table. We know the angles on a hexagon. The angles on a hexagon are 60 degrees. So after I cut the first 2 parallel lines, I'll rotate the rotary table 60 degrees in one direction, cut the 2 parallel lines, rotate it in the other direction, and cut the 2 parallel lines. Now, this Star of David is going to be engraved in there. It's only going to be about 10 thousandths deep. I think that's probably plenty enough. All I want it to do is to be highlighted. The base will be one color and the engraved will be another color. So let's see what we can do here. I'm using a 3/16 end mill. It's a brand new end mill, and I'm going to keep reminding myself to go slow and not break it. All right, there is 0. All right, that's back to 0 on the y-axis. Now we want to go to 1.516 on this side of 0. And I think that will be plenty deep enough. Now we're going to go 0.875 on the other side of y on the x-axis. And again, these coordinates are just off a bolt hole pattern program. All right, there's that set of parallel lines. Now I'm going to rotate the table 60 degrees. Now this will be starting a new point here, and it should come out to this point on one of our existing parallel lines. Now we'll move 0.875 on the other side of X. And I'm running out of space on the back here, so I'll just go back to the other side to do that. And that is going right down into the start of one of our previous lines. Now here's a shot of what the looks like now with the second set of parallel lines run. Now I'll rotate the rotary table 60 degrees on the other side of 0. So that'd be back down to 300. Now it should start in one of our previous lines and in another one. Same thing with each side. This should be our last line here. All right, let me release that right quick, and I'll get you a better image. Of course, it's got to be deburred. This piece of stainless is actually still a saw cut. It's not been squared up yet. I'll square it up when I get the vise back on. there's the Star of David engraved in it, about 10 thousandths deep. I'll carry this over to the belt sander, knock that off, and then deburr these edges. Okay, I've got the center located on our workpiece, which is of course in the center of the Star of David as well. So what I'm going to do first is of course spot drill it, so our drill bit doesn't wander. Now I'm going to drill that with a 23/64, which is 1/64 less than 3/8. I've got some 3/8 inch drill rod, tool steel, that I'll use for the pin, but I want it to press fit into this piece. That is some hard material right there. Plus, I believe that bit might could stand the sharpening. Now, I'm going to ream this out. Like I say, I want to press fit in there. And I was drilling it a 64th under 3/8. So now I'm going to ream it. But I'm going to ream it 1/1000th under. This is a chucking reamer. That is 1/1000th under. All right, one other thing I want to do is just to the side of this, I want to put an alignment pin so that when the pedestal sets on here, of course the menorah will have a front and back. And I want these points to be at the top and the bottom as you're facing the menorah. So I'm going to step over here, let's see. The pedestal is going to be 1 inch. Let me see what size spring pins I got, but I'm pretty sure what I'm going to do is step over about 3/8 from that edge and put a small pin in there. I'll get that set up and be right back. Okay, I've stepped over from the center that we were on. I've stepped over 0.375. And I'm going to drill a 1/8 inch hole through there that I'll use this 1/8 spring pin. It's 1 inch long, so that'll leave a 1/2 inch sticking up to go in the pedestal, again, just for alignment. And I've had to put a different drill chuck in because the other chuck won't hold a bit this small. All right, that wasn't bad at all. All right, so this is what our base looks like. Again, this will have a pin in it, a 3/8 inch tool steel pin sticking up that the pedestal will set down over, and this will be the spring pin to align it up. I think we're done with the base now, other than of course getting its final deburring and getting the color added to it. The next part we'll look at is the pedestal. The pedestal for the menorah is going to be made from a piece of 1 inch diameter by 3 inch long solid brass. The body of the menorah will sit on top of it as such. But what I want to do is break this edge off just a little bit right here on each side. Put a 45-degree angle on that, and then we'll go over to the lathe and put some decorative trim on the pedestal itself. But now I want to concern myself with just taking a little off of this edge right here. So I'm going to get that set up in a collet block, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, we've got the piece of brass mounted in a 5C collet. Got it in a collet block here, and I using the square collet block because we're going to want to turn it 180 degrees to do the other side. I'm only going to be doing two sides of this. I've got a 30 degree and a 15 degree angle block here. I put those under there as I tighten the vise down. Now, I need to get the mill set up. I should have done that before I brought you back, but I'm going to get the mill set up here, and then we're going to come back, touch off on here, and I'm going to take this down so that I leave a flat in the center about 0.6 inches. Okay, I've put a little backdrop back here, so maybe the camera will stay focused now, and you'll be able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. Again, I've got the what's going to be the base mounted in a collet block, and I've set it up for 45 degrees using two angle blocks, a 20 and a 15. I'm sorry, a 30 and a 15. Got that set up for 45 degrees. I've touched off there and got my Z-axis DRO set, and I'm going to come down so that I leave about 0.8 inches across here. I'll make a notation of how deep that is on here, and when we turn it over, we'll do the other side. The only real thing I'm interested in is leaving a flat in the center and being sure it's at least a ½ inch. That's the thickness of the piece that's going to be our body. I'm taking this very slow because I don't want it to pull the work out of the vise. I've got it tight, but I guess I didn't tighten my end mill down. All right, let's try that again. All right, just needs a minor little skim cut again. And that says I took 100/1000 off of that edge, which should stand to reason be correct. Now I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. I'm using a parallel across the bottom down there just to bridge the gap in the ways on the vise. All right, that is went in 1/1000 of where we zeroed before. And if I get this cut made and I see that I want more, I can always go back and cut a little bit more off of each side. All right, I believe I'm going to go back and take a little bit more off the other side. See how that is looking. I'll leave the mill set at the same depth. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now when the body mounts up here, sits up here, instead of having that sharp edge coming up there, we've got a nice little 45 to mount for that to set on to break that edge. All right, I'm going to carry the pedestal portion over to the lathe, and we'll start working on the adding a little design to it. All right, I'm over at the lathe now, and with the pedestal still mounted in the 5/6 collet. Got it in the collet chuck here on the lathe. And I'm going to put a starter hole in. We're going to drill about a ½ inch deep in here for a piece of 3/8 inch tool steel. This is a 23/64. This is a 64th less than 3/8. I want to ream it for the actual 3/8. And get the DRO on my tailstock set. Zero it right there. And we're going to go about a ½ inch. Now I'll get the chucking reamer in the drill chuck. And again, this is a 3/8 nominal chuck that I'm using right here. I don't have my air compressor turned on yet this morning, but there's the fit. I'm not sure if you can hear it on that, but it's actually kind of a snapping. So it's a good fit in there. That some Loctite will seal it up permanently. I'm going to turn the piece around and do the same thing in the other end. All right, this is the end that will be mounted to the base. Got a good fit in that again. But what I want to do while I've got this right here is I want to be sure that if anything, this base right here, or this pedestal, is concave. Okay, there's just a little bit of burr right there where I drilled. Now I'm going to fan that out pretty good using this deburring tool. That'll make it a little easier to line up. The base and the pedestal will not be permanently put together. If you recall, in the base, we put this extra hole over here as an alignment pin. This piece of drill rod will be pressed into the base, but then it will slide freely in and out of there. But I'm going to carry this back over to the mill when I get done here and come over just like we did at this point and put a clearance hole for that spring pin. But for now, I want to get this set up to actually turn the design that we're going to put on the outside of this. All right, I'm ready to put a little bit of a decorative spiral on the pedestal, but a 1/2 inch from the top and a 1/2 inch from the bottom. I'm going to use this turning tool here. It's got a sharp point on it, sharp angle on it, and cut a groove in there which will serve two purposes. One, it'll be a V groove in both places as a decorative groove, but it'll also be thread relief for when we start cutting the spirals in here. So I'm going to cut this first at 120 thousandths deep. And now we'll come down 2 inches and do the same thing on this side, this end. Now what I'm going to do, or what I want to do, is cut a spiral in between these two grooves. My lathe, the threading on my lathe, the coarsest thread it will do is 8 threads per inch. And I wanted a much coarser spiral on this. So I just experimented around with the change gears and found a set or a combination that would work. This gives me about, well, let's see, there's the starting position, 1, 2, about 2.5, almost 3 threads per, or 3 turns per inch. So that's what we're going to use for this, and I'm going to do this just like I would if I was cutting metric threads on this imperial lead screw. First off, what I'm going to do is bring it up and just touch off and set the compound at 0, set my DRO at 0 as well, and also set the cross slide at 0. Now once I engage the half nuts, I will not disengage them. I will start in this groove and I'll run it until it gets to this groove and I'll cut power. I'll back the cross slide up, reverse the lathe, and come back in this direction and stop it there, and do that twice. So I'm going to turn the RPMs way down, back it over here somewhere where I can get the half nuts engaged. I need to have my finger on the power button, because as soon as that threading tool comes up with this groove, I want to stop the power. Okay, I'll bring my cross slide back to the 0 where it was. I'm going to advance the compound 10 thousandths. This groove is only going to be 20 thousandths deep. And I'm feeding in this direction. I got the lathing forward, and I got my finger on the power button. And as soon as it gets to this groove, I will disengage. So let's give it a shot. Everything's engaged. I'll back that out, reverse the lathe. Bring the compound back into 0. I'm sorry, bring the cross slide back into 0. Advance the compound. Everything's ready to go. Lathes in forward. And I'm going to do this until I got about a 20 thousandths groove in there. Just something to add a little highlight. All right, that's as deep as I want to go. So what I'm going to do at this same location right here, I'm going to bring the compound back to 0. I'm going to reverse the feed on the lathe. So in essence what we're doing is cutting a left-handed thread now. And I'll come back in the other direction to the same depth. The half nuts are still engaged. The lathe is in forward, but the feed is in reverse. Again, cut left-handed threads. The lathe direction and the feed needs to be in opposite directions. So I've got the lathing forward, I've got the feeding back in the opposite direction. And I'm ready to make the second pass. And this should be the last pass. All right. Now while this is right here, that brought up a little bit of a burr around that. So what I want to do is simply take a piece of emery cloth, all right, I'll pull that out and show you what we've got. Now, it's going to be a little bit hard to see that detail in here, but the color that I decide on for the base and for the body itself, I will highlight this spiral in here and that V that I cut right there. I'll highlight that with the same of that color. Well, I believe this is probably a good place to end the first part of this video series. Second part will be coming up soon.